Hey, Katie. We're just going to go ahead and give everybody a few minutes here before we get started. We do have one pre-submitted question, and we'll go ahead and start with that. And then I'll also open up to see if you've got any questions as well. In the meantime, when we're giving everybody a few minutes to hop on here, if you have a question and want to go ahead and pre-submit it to chat or the Q&A, feel free to do so. But I'll be back here in just a few minutes to see if we've got anybody else coming in. Katie, I'm also going to give you the option to go ahead and talk too. So I'm going to allow you to talk here in case you want to come off mute and ask your questions.
Hello.
Hey, I can hear you.
Yeah, it's great. So I will paste one link in the listening documentation regarding listening documentation in the chat. I want to implement that, but in that documentation, if you see the report, parent and child are implemented on the same page. I want it to be like this: the parent report on one page and the child report on the another page, complete different page. Is it possible?
So instead of having the parent and child report being on the same like dashboard page, you want it on two different pages instead of like side by side to each other?
Yeah, right.
Let me go ahead. I'm gonna stop sharing the slide point here. I'm gonna go ahead and bring over my local host just real quick so we can kind of go through it together. So real quick, Katie, can you still see my screen right here? We should be looking at the studios now.
Yeah, we can see it, Ashley.
Okay, thank you. So just real quick, I can quickly go ahead and create a report here. We need some data structures real quick. Ryan, have you gone ahead and done the child report on a different page?
Yeah, we can do this. The answer here is that it's not going to be a parent and child report like what that documentation shows, because the parent and child report schema, or that setup, requires the use of the URL bar and the selection bus, as we call it. So what you can do in this regard is you could have the second report, the one on the other page, be a potentially flow sourced report or something like that, where it's evaluating something that's coming off of the first one. Now, a little more information here about your use case will actually be pretty helpful, as I have a feeling, am I assuming right in that you'd like to be able to click on something on one report and then have it reflect new data on a second report? Does that sound right? You may be muted.
Back on mute, yeah.
Yeah, okay, sorry. I found out. So,
not a problem.
Yeah, so I think what you say is correct. I want that on the first page where my first report is there, like the same functionality which is there for parent child, but on the two different pages.
And so the caveat there is that second page doesn't have a way to know what the first page was, what's selected on that. By the time you navigate away, that's a completely different URL. So there's no way for it to know that. We can probably accomplish the same task though. So in the parent-child relationship that you're looking for there, am I correct in assuming that you would like to select something or click on something on that first report or the parent, and then have that brought back down to that secondary report, like have it open maybe a new tab, which has different values than if they had clicked a different item on that first one. Is that correct? It's the namespace, Ashley, with the period in it. If you look, type namespace on the right there.
My bad. Thank you.
Gotcha. Yeah, so KT, it sounds like we're trying to be able to click an action or interact with an item on the first report and have that go to another report, which can definitely be done. What we would do is we would create what we call entity actions on those items. And so if these were like a list of, some data type, we could say a list of people, a list of accounts, whatever that might be, you would then click that item and then say, act, whatever the action is. And that action then sends that information to that second page with that report, so it knows what it should show. A really common use for this is like our case management page. It does exactly that. If you have a case entity structure and you click, on one of the items to go view its details, it takes you to an entirely different report that is specific to the item selected on the first one. So it's not going to be parent and child, because that is a specific term for being on the same page or sharing the same URL bar. What we want to do is, give me a moment to look up the documentation for this here, but we're looking for essentially some entity actions that can navigate. Here we go. So we'll start here. I'm going to go ahead and put some documentation out to everyone. This is about using the end form session to navigate the window in decisions. What you would do is you'd have that first report built up, and then from that, you would configure whatever actions you like. Maybe that's some math that needs to be done. Maybe that's some different evaluations. The very last step in that action flow is this end form session step. And that will navigate you out. If you look right there on the screen in front of us, we can see navigate and open URL. You can also use the display a report option there to directly display potentially that child report based on what you've sent off of the first one. But because they're not on the same page, you will have to build a flow to handle that data. Does that make sense? You might be muted again.
Yeah. So basically, I have to create one action, right?
Correct, yeah. And so if you'd like, I've gone ahead and I've pulled this right here. This is from the Decisions Example Lab. And so these are working projects that you can import into your environment, the one I've just sent there. And so this is an actual working example of doing exactly what you're looking for there. It uses the end form step to navigate you to another report with your specified filters. So you can import this, play around with it at your own time, just to kind of see how that works out for you. And then that should help kind of, work through how you can make that occur.
Okay.
Does that help you a little bit? I know it's going to be a little bit to go ahead and create the flow. And unfortunately, just because it's a larger project, I've been trying to go ahead and create a little bit of data to go ahead and show you that, but it's just a little bit more involved. And so it might take me a little bit to go ahead and be able to show you that on the screen here. Do you have any other questions?
I will add in that if you'd like some additional time and assistance building this, I think this is a great use for the decision support team. Typically a case like this where it's a, hey, how can I get a little assistance implementing this design idea I have? That's kind of, the bread and butter over on that team. They live for that.
Oh, got. I will look into this.
Yeah, I would definitely say, give this an import, see if we can figure out what we'd like from there. And then if not, if it's still a little out there, go ahead and either join another one of these. We can try to answer follow-up questions, or an email to support@decisions to get one of our support technicians on a call with you, and they'll spend like an hour to just build this out, kind of, and assist you with those questions you have.
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Did you have any other questions? Or I see we've got another attendee here in the webinar. Does anybody else have any other questions here?
Sure. I'm in version 6.18, I think. And so I'm just curious, kind of structurally, I have two checkboxes that I want to, enable, disable, depending on, the status of each one. So click one, the other one gets disabled and vice versa. So I'm kind of thinking that this happens with, kind of two visibility flows. Kind of thing, that each have a trigger of each other kind of thing, and each disable the other object. But I'm kind of wondering if there's if there's another way of doing that that's a little bit more streamlined, and possibly whether that would be something that's available in future versions.
So when you're talking about doing those different visibility rules, especially with being version 6, the easier way you could look at it is, I know in version 7 and version 8, we actually implemented active form flows. And that actually allows you to set up basically part of today's question actually was to go ahead and do part of a validation rule. It allows you to go ahead and do the truth table and basically decipher if a Boolean is true, then it's going to go ahead and go down one path setting the validation for that, versus if it's false, it will go ahead and set a completely different validation. So I think the easiest way to go ahead and do that in version 6 would be to set up those two validation rules. If somebody else on the call has a better idea, please let me know. But in version 7, the active form flows really play a good role in that to make it easier.
So
Yeah,
in version, yep, sorry.
I would say I'd second that. Is active form flows allow for a lot more kind of, not like granular control, but you can essentially drag inside a flow. You can drag out your components that you had put on a form. So if you had a form called dropdown A, you could drag out a representation of dropdown A in your data explorer and see it, just evaluate whatever's in there on a rule as if it was another string or any other field available to you. So it does get a little more robust with these in version 7 and 8. But we do, as well as, Alex, you've been with us for a few versions, we don't deprecate out stuff when we update. So all of your visibility in those flows will still exist. They just exist in the legacy section in version 7 here.
Okay, so basically, I'm on the right path for version 6, but have hope that things are better. Like there's better opportunities in version 7 when we get there.
Yeah, there's more levers to pull, for lack of a better term.
Okay, perfect. Great, thank you.
And the example of the version 7 is actually what I just pulled up on the screen here today. One of the pre-submitted questions we had asked was basically from a dropdown. As long as the answer was yes, then it would go ahead and set a validation to where it required a little more of an explanation, versus no, it would go ahead and allow that person to go ahead and press submit. So what we did along that path is just go ahead and set up that statement rule that said, if this comes back, yes, it's true. And we're going to go ahead and set the validation of that text box to where they have it required, versus if it's false, then we're not going to go ahead and have them fill in that text box. But you could definitely go ahead and build this out more if you wanted to.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions to help you guys out today? Beautiful. So Maru, do we have the person who pre-submitted the question on the call at all? I don't think so.
Not on the call right now.
Okay, that's fine. If you guys are okay with it, I'm just gonna go ahead and walk through answering those questions. So that way, or answering his questions, so that we kind of see inside version 7, those active form flows. I know sometimes they can go ahead and mess people up, so it's good just to have those friendly reminders too. So what we're doing is we're starting with a simple form. And like I was saying, from a drop-down box, they had a little bit of static text that was flowing through. And they just wanted to set up the rule to where as long as it came back yes, then they would have to fill out this form here. Now, if it came back no, they could go ahead and submit and be along their way. So what we did is over here in our activities panel, we have the active form flows. Alex, you do have those legacy flows down here below as well, so that way we can still incorporate all the rules that you're used to seeing too. But to set up this little active form flow here, we're gonna go ahead and edit. I first started out with that rule. I did do a statement rule, just setting up some input data for that dropdown, mapping in the right dropdown there, making sure that contains the value yes. And then when we go ahead and map into the statement rule, because we're actually pulling from form data itself, we're gonna go to form data, the dropdown, because that's the name I gave it. And then we actually need to make sure we have the selected item right here too. That allows us to go ahead and pull in the actual item we selected versus just the entire dropdown, and it has no idea what it's supposed to be sorting. And then we also have steps that are just called set validations. This allows us to go ahead and do those validations to the text box itself, or even over to different form controls. The form control that I wanted it to look at is that text box. Now the validation issue that we did is, hey, we made this a constant. I'm going to go ahead and just edit this real quick. Maybe it doesn't want me to. There we go. There's the pencil. And we actually made this fatal to where if it didn't happen, then we would go ahead and have it basically stop. You wouldn't be able to press submit. I did go ahead and add a little bit of a message right here, just letting them know they need to go ahead and add value to that text. And then on the false path, we also need to set up a validation there, basically telling the system, hey, we don't need a validation. So we're going to go ahead and bring in the same form control of that text box and then set down here below to null. This allows it to render and actually affect on the text box itself. Now, setting up these active form flows, there's a few things that you need to remember. The first one is to go ahead and set the trigger. I did go ahead and set this trigger to actually be on the selection change because we've got a drop down. If this was a text box where we're entering information there, we could also do on a stop typing. The last thing we need to do to set up this active form flow is to submit down here at the bottom. That way we make sure, hey, even if it validates, it's going to actually stop and not allow them to submit through. If we don't click on the submit button down here at the bottom, it's still going to go ahead and show that validation, but it's going to allow them to continue. I just press OK here. I'm going to go ahead and come out and we're going to go ahead and actually test this real quick. I don't remember if active form flows work properly in the debugger. So if this doesn't, oh, see, we already have our validation here. And if I press submit, it's not going to let me. So there we go. So those validations are very much easy to do inside of the active form flows as they are for setting up multiple different validation rules there. Alex, I know you're not quite on version 7 yet, but you can actually start building that out to where those active workflows are also bringing in data from a separate catalog or database itself too. So we use them sometimes in our demos to actually pre-fill information.
So do you guys have like an example project of this thing that I could like kind of install version 7 locally and fiddle around with?
Sorry, you said an active project. Are you meaning just messing with form flows and understanding them?
Do you have anything built out like as an example project that you know, walks you through all the various facets of the active form flow?
Yeah, I think I can speak to that a little bit here.
I was about to ask you.
Yeah, no problem. The active form flow stuff is more of the terminology. It's like an umbrella term that has now covered what used to be validation, visibility, and data flows. So while there wouldn't be a great project, I'm happy to send over just the kind of generic documentation on that. And I do have one that is specific to validation and visibility active form flows if you'd like that.
Okay. Oh, so basically I'm just wandering through the documentation on this. Is that what I'm understanding?
At least at the moment. I mean, actually, we could definitely walk through what we've got configured here and show you some of the different options inside that. But certainly, like it isn't really a thing where there's not really a way to make just a project about active form flows. Now we could do a quick build about like a validation active form flow. Sure, it's just that's more of it's really just an umbrella term, like a catch-all, to be honest with you, Alex. You know,
Okay.
it's like saying, could we do something on rules? Sure, but we want to get a little more specific on it. If there's like
Gotcha.
a specific validation or visibility, or you have something in 6 that you'd like to know, what does that look like in 7? Yeah, let's go with that.
Gotcha.
And we can certainly, actually, we had just kind of spoken through some of those validation ones, but we can see this is where, if you had those configured, when you upgrade your legacy data flows visibility, they just load up right here. Really,
Right.
the biggest difference is the flow designer and some of those triggers that you can set.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I've gone ahead and put the doc for validation and visibility active form flows out there. It's very, very similar to what you already have. It shouldn't be, be familiar with a few of those checkboxes for run at startup and is blocking and those types of things.
Yeah.
Okay, and am I still able to download version 7 locally?
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's on our releases site.
Okay, great.
And if you'd like, I'm sure, feel free to send me an email or something. We can walk you through how to, if you're just doing it like locally as a test, you can actually install 6 and 7 in tandem, just on the same machine there due to the change in .NET to .NET Core. So you could have both if you wanted to actively evaluate them side by side.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. So I did have a little bit of material prepared. We've only got 7 minutes left though, Alex, before we kind of see if anybody else has any questions and go from there.
Yeah, no worries.
Do you have anything else for us, or do you want me to get started on I was going to go over a little bit of reporting aspects.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, awesome sauce. Are you guys working out of reports right now, Alex? I know everybody else is a little bit more familiar with you than I am, but what are you guys looking at for reports right now?
Reporting is kind of like my weakest link. So, this will be great.
Awesome. Okay, so real quick, I was working on one here just a minute ago, and I'm just going to go ahead and allow us to have a little bit of report data flow through real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and just save off to my entity here. So give me just a second. So inside of reporting, we're able to go ahead and not only do different, well, maybe. We're able to not only do different filters, but we're also able to go ahead and grab information about like, here, sorry, I'm trying to click through and talk at the same time. It just wasn't working for me. But when we come to like an invoice report here, we're able to go ahead and grab just one data source usually. And then the filters right here, this allows us to actually filter on the field as well as do like your date range filters. If I come through and I do a company field filter, I'm able to go ahead and like actually dig into the company equals Henry's or Ready Refresh, something like that. Whereas if I go down and I'm actually looking at more of a, I think this is just a simple data entity or simple data structure. But if I'm able to go ahead and capture more information like flow execution, we're able to go ahead and see from other data structures initiated by, created on, current assignment, those different filters. And we're actually able to start manipulate the report based upon like the current user itself. That way you don't have to plug in a specific person. It can just be them looking at their own. These data fields here over here, you're able to go ahead and of course select which ones you want shown. But if we want some up here that are going to go ahead and relate to other data fields themselves, we are able to click on the actual data field and then actually decide if it's visible on the dashboard or not. and then setting up those different filters. These little guys with the 3 dots and lines through them, this is how we actually set up that different filter. We can go ahead and do a sort by to where it's going to go ahead and do the arrangements from top to bottom, or I most commonly do the grouping by. That way I can go ahead and see all of one type together. If this is more going through and looking at different applications or review process, I actually usually do the grouping by the status. So that way I see everything that's pending versus everything that's approved and denied. We can also come over here to our views. And when I press add, now that I have a grouping done based upon the company, I can go ahead and do add and I'll see all these charts down here. Now we can add these charts themselves onto our dashboards and actually make them interactive. And that's set up by that selection bus. We can also do tiles too on those dashboards that are done with the selection bus. And then we're able to go ahead and do a report to where as we click on those different tiles, it's going to actually change the report down below. Oh,
So, okay,
did
so
you have a question?
Yeah, if I understand this, the reports are kind of like pretty tabular, and you know, to get like a kind of a richness to the experience, the idea behind that is you basically use a dashboard and where you're able to kind of add, you know, additional kind of charts and buttons and metrics and KPIs and that sort of stuff.
I think to get the best use out of decisions, it's to go ahead and use all aspects of it. I am very much more of a visual person, which is why I love decisions so much. So the reporting we can absolutely do and have a report set up. You can run reports inside of flows and actually capture that data. I think to get the best use of the information itself is, yeah, to go ahead and set that dashboard, especially because we can make it interactive on the dashboard to have those charts and graphs, to have the different tiles to where they're actually going to go ahead and change the information below. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm kind of like a thieving type of person. So one of the things that I noticed attending multiple lunch and learns is that there's a bunch of stuff that you guys are doing out there with CSS that is very, you know, much more attractive than anything I've come up with so far. And I'm wondering, like, do you guys have like a library of that kind of stuff that, you know, can be pilfered from?
On the dashboard itself or just in general?
Kind of, well, you know, so with dashboards and kind of reports and this sort of stuff, like, I mean, as I say, the stuff that I've done is kind of, you know, kind of plain Jane, but some of the stuff that I see you guys working on is, you know, quite attractive.
Yeah, so you should actually come with a catalog. It should be under your system designers and CSS, and you should have at least a handful of different ones to choose from. When we're looking at those different dashboards, you should have that selection. That was to show the dashboard. Give me just a second here. When we come out to properties, as soon as we click into the dashboard here, you'll have your styles, and this is where we're able to go ahead and select those different CSS formats.
Okay.
A little hack that I've learned as we've gone through this, if you ever want to make certain changes, you can always come to the CSS, download it, and then open it in like even just notes, and you can actually go ahead and find colors, searching for the actual color name itself, and then just exchanging the color.
Okay.
And then just re-upload it or update the document itself.
Okay, great.
And Alex, you know how to do like the developer tools when we're looking at CSS to like grab from your own web page or something like that, correct?
You mean like the F12 thing?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's the way that we wander through decisions objects and find out what you guys are naming them. So if we decide we want to do something in particular with that, that's kind of the way into that. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, so I usually use the developer tools the most when doing CSS because usually, at least for me, I'm a sales engineer. So we're grabbing proof of concepts and we're just going ahead and doing a little bit of styling towards that company itself. So even if I go up to your decisions, I just go ahead and use it to grab different logos, different colors, stuff like that. But yeah, it allows you to go ahead and sort through the different properties on that web page itself. And then over here, like for me, I can actually see the background color right here. I believe if I scroll down, yeah, it gives me all the different colors within this website itself.
Right. So if for example, you know, like for example, the advanced, is it called the advanced grid? The thing that,
An advanced data grid. Yeah, it's a
advanced data
report.
grid. Yeah, so like all of the way that that thing is built and the, you know, classes that it's called, that's all kind of basically visible through this kind of interface. That's how we wander through that to find out, you know, if we want to, like, you guys don't publish like a complete CSS specification of all of the attributes of all of the controls and that sort of stuff, right? So the way to find these things is to wander through the F12 land, the F12 land.
It sounds like, if I can jump in, Alex, we're just looking for, you know, kind of a list of classes. I went ahead and put a documentation link, sorry, again, for like the third one in a row. But that is pretty much exactly what you're looking for, of predefined CSS classes for, you know, if you look on the right side of the table of contents, it'll basically give you everything in their navigation tree, tags, just whatever you're looking for.
Okay, gotcha.
As well, you know, my personal tips and what I've done over the years here is I will typically go into the CSS folder there if it's a new one and I'm trying to figure it out. I will just apply CSS to whatever it is, a form, a page, anything like that, and then see the change. If it's just like a color change, I will try to, you know, find the class through there by cross-referencing that. You know, you can go, actually, can we go to that dashboard page again and just pick any component on a page so we can show individual styling? And so it is a bit of a test and kind of go process, but if we like click on the report here or the label, yeah, and hit view, any of these things, doesn't matter which one we do. And then you can define the CSS class right there independently. I don't think we've got one selected
right
on this. Yeah, just click out the gray space and get anything on there. Cool. And we
Yeah,
can
we
see
already saw change.
Exactly. And so if we go ahead and click on that, you can go a little further and play with classes. You can give it a manual class. A lot of the time for label headers here, I like to do H1, H2, or H3 for headers there. And so based on those name declarations, you can then go into the corresponding CSS document and just say, I'm going to go ahead and say H1 or H2 is for my title. So then you've kind of manually told it what you're going to use. You don't necessarily even need to know the class name. If you can just use that, then that works for you. I would also recommend a common browser extension called Magic CSS. It's pretty much the same thing as the dev tools and inspecting. However, it lets you make changes and test them just right in the UI window. You can just type, you know, BG color equals green, and it will just adapt whatever element you've just done in real time. It's like live listening. So you can kind of use that to assist you.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem at all. But feel free to download any of the ones inside that CSS directory. I would recommend my personal one I typically always use is the Agile Co. That typically comes with every environment, and you can just play with that, change the colors, go to town.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Well, that kind of gave you a little bit of information about reports, and then we dove a little bit into talking about dashboards and CSS a little bit, and then on top of that, just going over those validation rules and the active form flows and showing you that inside of 7. Do you have any other questions, Alex?
You know, at the moment, I'm great. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So as long as we were cool, Maru or Sabrina, are we good to go ahead and close out this webinar?
Yes, we are.
Okay, awesome. Well, Alex, you have a great day and have a great weekend, okay?
Okay, great. Thank you all. Cheers.
Thank you. Have a good one, guys. Bye.